So this is Ben, my best bud. I've known him for nearly 9 years now, if you can believe that.
Scary long time, isn't it?
It is a long time. And when I first met Ben, he used to put animal corpses in his mouth for fun. Isn't that right, Ben?
Yeah, well,
I don't want to
yeah,
dob you in or anything.
Yeah.
It's just a fact of what happened. Like,
No, it is. So what? Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah. True.
Here we are,
Time.
It is a long time, and here we are 9 years later, and now you're the newest vegan in England, possibly, maybe, pretty new.
Unsubstantiated fact, but yeah. I mean, also unprovably not correct. So
yes, unprovably not correct. And so, can you just like go through sort of what took you from animal hater to animal lover?
Well, I guess. Well, but that in itself is interesting, isn't it? Of like animal hater, because obviously like I realize you're being like lighthearted and joking, but it is like an interesting point that I mean, I'm sure there's some people out there, but I imagine most people who eat meat aren't like, oh, I hate animals.
No.
And when we met 9 years ago, I did eat meat. I obviously wouldn't have described myself as an animal hater, but also probably would have said like, oh, like I like animals, like I like.
Yeah, I think that most people are not indifferent. They actually do like animals, and most people, you ask them, they're against slaughterhouses and stuff.
Yeah. Like I think I would have said, oh, I'm like actively like and not just sort of traditional pet animals, but also like farmed animal. Like I think I would have said like, oh, I've been to like petting zoos and whatever. Like I've petted a goat. I don't want to, I wouldn't kill it. And yet, obviously, was by proxy.
Sure.
So the steps, I guess, whilst we knew each other, I became vegetarian.
Yeah. Do you remember when you did
still know each other?
Do you remember when you made that change?
On and off for a long, long time.
You were always sort of really close anyway.
Yeah, very soon after we met. In fact, before we met, because I, like as a dirty teen, lots of my girlfriends are vegetarian. So obviously, anytime I like went out for a meal with them or went round to their houses or cooked myself, it would normally be vegetarian.
Because you were quite punk. You were into like the punk subculture. Would you describe being vegetarian or vegan a little bit punk?
I think it can be. In fact, there's a subculture, and someone listening probably knows a lot more about this than I do, because I was a wannabe suburban punk when I was 15, so it's not the best. But there is a subculture of like punk ethos, I suppose, and obviously the whole idea is like, people aren't going to tell us what to do or do what I want or whatever. And there's a subculture of that where it's like completely like you're straight edge. So you don't smoke, you don't drink, you don't take drugs, and also you don't eat meat, and you don't. And I imagine there's also like sort of you don't have any animal products.
Yeah.
And there's certain people, like I'm fairly certain the lead singer of like Propaganda is a vegan.
I would guess so, just like listening to his lyrics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I guess there's always been an element of or for a long time, much longer than even, meeting you.
Yeah.
And then 8 years ago, we lived together, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, in a really disgusting little hovel of a place.
I mean, it was grim. It was. In the first week, a window broke and wasn't fixed for the remaining 9 months.
Yeah, that's very true. There. Yeah, so it was often slug infested, and we did have black mold in that. Yeah,
it wasn't the nicest place, but I enjoyed living with you.
Yeah, that aspect was all right, wasn't it?
Yeah, that one aspect. And even when we first met, quite a lot of vegetarian meals.
Yeah,
but I still ate meat. And then probably a year after that, I started eating mainly vegetarian meals, but still ate meat.
Yeah.
And then probably around 2017 is when I like just didn't eat meat at all. maybe very occasionally.
Call yourself like an official vegetarian around that time.
Yeah. I guess I think that's probably a reasonably accurate timeline, I guess.
Yeah.
And then vegetarian for a long time, and then like you say, I mean, in terms of like turning sort of quote unquote officially vegan, very recent. So,
And why did you make that change then from vegetarian to vegan?
Good question. I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think not many people sort of go completely 100% from vegetarian to vegan in one day or one. It's not like an event. There's no like cataclysmic event
where people transition.
It's a transition. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like completely cut out meat and then cut out milk. And that's because, obviously, like, I think certainly your listeners will know, but like, I just think generally it's quite well known that the dairy industry, particularly in the UK, but I think globally, but, I only really know about the UK because where I live.
Yeah.
But it's like not very good at all. So you cut out milk. And I don't know if you know this about me, but when I was a kid, I was like very allergic to milk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What about were you breastfed? Do you have breast milk?
A bit, but I was allergic to that as well. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, I was breastfed a bit and then obviously like vommed a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
So it was moved on to formula. And then when they like wean you off formula, like I was very allergic to milk for a very long time. It used to really make me vomit a lot. And then when I was older, like a child, like an actual child, it didn't make me vomit or anything. But if I drank too much milk, I really got like very sore legs.
Sore legs?
Mm.
Okay.
Really ached. And then it like for like years, like until I gave up drinking cow's milk, I like would be fine with it. I could drink it, it wouldn't make ache or anything. Then every now and again, I would be like, oh, this milk's like gone off, like it tastes gone off, like really sour and gross, like milk goes. But it wouldn't be, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I went through that sort of stage as well. I would smell milk and I could never tell if it was off.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd be like, oh, that's completely gone off. And then my girlfriend, various girlfriends, could I say? So that's like,
player.
Yeah, I should stress not at the same time. Well, like like that's not gone off basically.
Yeah,
we can use it. It'd be weird. I'd have it like I'd have it one day and then drink it the next. Well, that's gone off, and then drink it the next. Be like, no, it's fine. Yeah, not necessarily been like very good with milk my entire life. Like cow's milk, I should say.
Yeah.
So he changed to like the plant-based milks, which I've got to say, there's definitely levels, and I know that everyone's taste is different, and like there's like obviously they're designed and obviously like manufactured in a way which obviously they're going to have different tastes. But when you first change, I think everyone sort of has a bit of like, oh, which one should I get? And I knew I didn't like soy milk very much because my mum has had it for a long, long time since I was maybe like secondary school. So like over like 15 years or so, I had soy milk. So I knew I didn't really like that because as like when we were growing up, we used to get both. So sometimes I'd have soy milk. So I knew I didn't really like that. And then mainly drink oat milk. But when you go through them, there's like that little period, isn't there, where you're like picking sort of which one.
Is that a fun little process for you?
It was all right. It's quite interesting, isn't it? It's quite interesting.
I bought my brother all the different plant milks because I'm trying to get him off cow's milk. All of them. So we tried all of them. You got like rice, hazelnut.
Rice is all right. I think I quite like rice.
Rice is nice. Yeah, a lot of people don't like it. I really like it.
Do you? Oh, okay. I'm surprised not many people like it. Hemp genuinely is one of the worst things I've ever drunk in my life. It's just, and like again, I realize that lots of people probably do like it listening, but I mean, why? It's just I would genuinely just cut it out of like even milk-based drinks. I would just cut it out if my choice was to have hemp milk again.
And it's one of the most expensive ones too, right? The hemp milk.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's definitely not a cheap alternative. It's not like the cheap version kind of thing.
Yeah. So you're an oat boy then.
Disgusting. So I'm an oat boy, mainly.
You got a favorite brand? You on the Oatly?
I'd like a bit of Oatly, yeah. Although, to be honest, recently, Barista obviously is the best version of all of them. They all do a Barista version. That's the best one. Yeah, I was an Oatly boy. Recently, Outpro.
Oh,
Outpro oat milk. It's cheaper though than Oatly. Well, it is in our
Oatly
local
is a bit
shop.
pricey. It is a bit pricey.
I think I think they might be the same price, but there's an offer on Outpro, isn't it? So
You can get plant milks now for like it's either 40p or 60p if you go for the cheapest of the cheap, which I think is like Tesco. I think do it that cheap. Yeah, for like 1 litre. So now, like these days, it is around the same price as cow's milk, which is quite nice.
Particularly impressive, given that cow's milk is artificially kept like crazy low, isn't it? Well, I think. I mean, completely unsubstantiated.
I was just taking your word for that, mate. I don't know. I believe they do like pour a lot away. I see it on the news and stuff occasionally.
Yeah. Not had cow's milk for like several years.
So you're just having milk in some processed things that you were eating, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And milk powder and whatever, and then I guess then sort of cut out eggs quite recently, and then the main thing left is cheese, which I think is like the last thing for most people, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Did you find it difficult to cut out the cheese?
Yeah, I guess so. It's tricky, I think, in terms of pure taste. Well, like taste and texture, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to cut it out as like part of a meal. You know, having mozzarella on like a pizza, say, it's quite easy to get an alternative which works just as well.
Yeah.
I think to have it as a base of your meal, I think it's quite tricky to do.
Like in a lasagna or something.
Yeah, lasagna or maybe less so lasagna, because I think again it's kind of that sort of mozzarella-esque. But I guess like you wouldn't. I wouldn't have like vegan cheese with crackers, say.
Okay, well, you may be convinced otherwise, but yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, I say that I've not had many vegan cheeses, so yeah, we're not willing to try it, but of the ones I've had, I wouldn't have them with crackers.
You know, for me, when I switched over from vegetarian to vegan, I was worried about cheese being difficult until I just did it. And then I didn't really miss it. I think it probably took a week, maybe 2 weeks, and I just didn't care anyway. Like now I don't care about cheese at all.
Oh, fair enough. That's interesting. That is interesting. I think the other thing is with a lot of meals, like I say, like, I don't know, lasagna or whatever, you can get vegan replacement cheeses anyway. But then you're not going to put cheese with like a stir fry anyway, are you?
No, that's right.
Or I don't know, like a Caribbean curry or whatever. Like there's a lot of meals that you wouldn't put cheese with anyway. So I don't.
Yeah.
Which we have a lot of anyway. So I don't know, tricky but not. Yeah, maybe the same as you.
Not as big as the hype.
I miss it. Yeah. Like it's nice, but I'm not like sat at home rocking back and forth like, oh, give me some, I don't know, whatever, Gouda.
Why did you go vegan? Was it like animals, environment, your health?
It wasn't my health. peak fit. No, I'm not. No. Yeah, animals and like the carbon footprint of the meat and the dairy industry.
Yeah.
Definitely. Probably the main reason would be like environmental, like pure, like environmental reasons. Yeah.
Okay.
If you were to list my priorities. And then the second would be the sort of ethics, and it's the same with. So I think it's interesting, isn't it? When most people, I guess, turn vegetarian, you sort of say why, and I don't think you should kill an animal.
Yeah,
and then I think when you sort of read a bit more about it, you're like, oh, that means also cutting out like dairy as well, or the other eggs and stuff like this. I think you sort of, in its most basic form, you kind of think, well, I don't think animals should be harmed, so I won't directly eat them. And then you sort of, obviously, which, I mean, I think it's the same with lots of things. I think it's the same with sort of, I know a lot of people who eat meat, but also wouldn't eat palm oil or, wouldn't eat palm oil, but, wouldn't like, don't get products with palm oil in because of that sort of impact on the natural environment of the areas where that's grown. Hypocrites.
I think as well. Really. It's not hypocritical. I think it's oftentimes just a lack of the knowledge. because it's not very well.
No,
It's not given
absolutely.
to us. We have to go and search for it.
No, exactly. And but I think it's the same thing, isn't it? It's the reason they and I wouldn't eat products with palm oil in is that because it's destroying the habitats of orangutans. And I think when you delve a bit deeper than just directly you eating an animal to being not like there's a lot of things that affect animal welfare, obviously.
Just going back to vegetarian, I think a lot of people don't know that cows and chickens are killed in the dairy and egg industries. I think for me anyway, that's why I was vegetarian for such a long time, because I just didn't realize like meat is literally the body part of an animal. It's really obvious an animal was killed.
Yeah, it's clearly direct, isn't it?
Yeah. But it's easy to believe these sort of images of free-range cows and chickens living happily, and the farmer just goes and picks up their eggs. I always bought free-range eggs, Farmer goes, picks up the eggs that they left, they're not using them, and you sort of believe that narrative then.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, obviously it's a perpetuating narrative, obviously perpetuating narrative that they want you to believe. But yeah, it's a very good point. It's a very good point, definitely. And I suppose that's it, though, isn't it? I mean, what do you think about like owning chickens or like goats or whatever?
So chickens for eggs, right?
Chickens for eggs, yeah. Well, I guess as a pet as well, but
sure.
I suppose, yeah.
So the problem with purchasing a chicken as a pet is you're pretty much only going to find females, right? You pretty much want the females because they lay eggs. There's not a high demand for males. And when you buy a chicken, they come from a hatchery most of the time, like 99% of the time. And in the hatchery, they kill the males because nobody wants them. So if you buy a female chicken, technically, I don't know if technically is the right word. You've basically paid for a male to be killed.
You're aiding an industry, which obviously is
exactly, yeah. They factor that into it.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And the other side, is you shouldn't be taking the eggs from the chickens either. And the reason for that is, I believe 10% of the chicken's calcium is used to create the egg, right? If you take away the egg, something in the chicken's biology tells them to lay another egg. Leave the egg there, they won't. And the other thing is, if you leave the egg there, eventually the chicken will eat it and regain the nutrients that it spent to make the egg.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that is what they do, isn't it? If it's not fertilized, I should say. Yeah, interesting point. I mean, you can get rescue chickens.
Yeah, there's no problem with having a rescue animal and taking care of them. But again, like the eggs, like you're taking them, you're causing a problem, and it's not obvious information. This is, again, information you have to go looking for. Is there anything you don't get about veganism?
Almost certainly, yes. But in terms of like me being able to directly tell you, like, I don't get this. I don't know because I don't know it to not know. Do you see what I mean?
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. You're not even aware that you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, no, I completed
I know everything. Clocked it.
Completed veganism, mate. I actually don't eat anything anymore. I just float around on a bubble of self-importance.
Yeah. That's it. We get like this high horse. When you're vegan for long enough, a horse is delivered to you and you get to sit on it.
Sit on it. Which in itself is ironically cruelly.
It is, isn't it? What's your opinion on activism?
It's education, isn't it, at the end of the day? I mean, like you say, obviously a lot of big companies have a vested interest in sort of either not letting information get out or displaying it in a way which obviously portrays them in a positive light or at least a non-negative light. So in that sense, activism is good, of like, counteracting that.
If we want to go like meat eater to vegetarian to vegan, how do we get you to the next point, get you active?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think it depends because, saying like, well, what do you think of activism? Well, in
it's very broad.
Sense, it's such a broad question, isn't it? It's such a, I think it's good, like I say, to like teach people. But I do also think it can sometimes unintentionally have the opposite effect.
Yeah.
It depends on how it's, it depends on how it's done, doesn't it? It depends on, like, I suppose in a sense, this podcast is activism, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess technically, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's educational. Not this episode necessarily, but
But like putting discourse out there, somebody
yeah,
listens to this
exactly.
podcast, they talk about it. There's a bit of a conversation going, a little bit of a
Exactly. Yeah,
ripple
yeah.
effect. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I think in that sense, I don't necessarily think like this is going to have any unintended negative. I don't think anyone's going to listen to this podcast and be like, oh, I'm so angry at this podcast. I'm going to go. I'm going to eat more meat.
I'm going to eat 2 steaks tonight.
yeah. But I think that can be an unintended consequence of some activism. But yeah. I mean, it depends on what you mean in terms of like, do you mean would I, join a protest or sign a petition for the improvement of the UK dairy industry?
So, for example, when I come back to the UK, I want to go to slaughterhouses and see the trucks come in and stuff. And you go up, you film the animals and show people what they're paying for, basically. Something like that. Would you be up for that kind of activism? Now, I know you're an early vegan as well, so you're still here trying to figure everything out.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say absolutely not, but I think it's, I don't know, I also think there's a sense of like you say, I don't think I'm necessarily in a position to do that.
It's
if
early days, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like it seems a bit of a bit, and maybe that's wrong, and maybe you should engage anyway, and maybe it doesn't matter what stage of your own journey you're at. I get that, but personally, I don't know. It seems like maybe, I don't know, a sense of hypocrisy, but maybe that's the wrong word.
You're trying to teach people something that you don't feel too knowledgeable about yourself.
Right. Yeah.
I get that. I didn't go active the first day I was vegan. It took me a long time, and it was from watching other activists on YouTube, really, and learning what people say. And you'll find out people say about 10 or 20 different things as their reasons for eating meat and their arguments. And that's it. There's no more. And you just learn the answers, basically. And one little tip is pretty much everything they're going to say. If you don't know the answer, you can say, okay, but does that justify killing animals? Right? Someone says, it's in my culture, or, it's been tradition for thousands of years, or, we've got canines, we're actually omnivores, we have this body designed to process meat. You might not know about biology. You can say, okay, yeah, maybe we can. I don't know. But just because we can, does that mean we should? You learn, because there's not many different conversations.
Interesting point about the canines, isn't it? Well, about all those things, but about the canines particularly, because it does, but by that logic, you'd obviously eat sort of the worms and grubs that apes do, which most people don't.
Not up for that, are they?
So no.
But then you've got
not sure a canine helps you eating a processed burger necessarily. I'm not sure it's what it was designed for.
I haven't looked too much into it yet, but I don't think they're designed to eat animals anyway. A hippo has the biggest canines in the world, and they're herbivorous, right? I can't see.
I don't think they are. Are
you sure?
No, not at all. I'm not sure at all.
Can I Google it?
But hippos are one of the most dangerous. I know this is completely non-vegan related, but hippos are one of the most dangerous animals in Africa. But I don't know if that's because they're eating people, or
you know what?
They're just because they kill people. Yeah.
Mostly herbivorous. Fair play. Nah, fair enough. There you go. So in that sort of situation, you say, I don't know the answer, but is that a good reason?
and the hippo replies, whoa.
Pretty much. That's veganism. In terms of your nutrition and things like that, are you worried at all?
No.
No.
Not at all. I think it's a mad argument, to be honest, of a mad argument to be you won't get your nutrition. It's like,
yeah.
No, not at all. I don't think there's anything that you don't. And I mean, I think the only thing, and you know a great deal more about this than me, but from my understanding, the one big thing, which you obviously get in plants, but less so than you would in meat or dairy, is iron. From my understanding,
okay,
is the big sort of thing. So That's the only thing I'd say that I'm slightly worried about. But also, I mean, you can get iron tablets, and also there is iron in vegetables. There's just not
Yeah.
as much.
Well,
So
dark green vegetables especially are very high in iron.
yeah.
So actually, it's not. I've never taken iron supplements or anything. I don't think I know any vegans who take them. I think it's like an overblown thing. There is one thing, vitamin B12. Do you know much about that?
Not really, no. I'm not, I say I'm not worried. Well, I'm not worried about it, but I'm also not going to sit here and pretend that I know anything about nutrition.
Sure.
It's not.
Yeah, I've just learned stuff that I had to learn because I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
Vitamin B12 is something that a lot of people say you can only find in animal products. And where vitamin B12 comes from is, I believe, bacteria in the dirt. And we used to get it when we were more natural from not washing vegetables and from drinking stream water from dirt. Yeah. So nowadays we're cleaning everything. And if you're vegan, if you're not consuming any animal products, it's recommended you're taking some kind of B12 supplement, or at least drinking like fortified plant milks and fortified foods which have B12. It is in animal products, but the reason for that is that the animals are injected with B12 by the farmers. It's just that fact gets omitted a lot.
So what you're saying is cut out the middleman. Just inject B12 into yourself.
That's it, mate. Honestly, as I've been understanding nutrition more, it always seems obvious to cut out the middleman. Like I learned, like protein pretty much is only in plants.
Yeah. The animals get it from the plants, don't they?
Yeah, so just go straight to the plants.
It's not like you never see a baby animal being born and it's fucking like, can I swear? It's podcast.
Yeah, it's okay.
And they're like, they come out and they're like really hench because they're like absolutely stacked with protein from birth. Like they're obviously gaining, aren't they?
Yeah, so that's the only thing I would recommend to you. Get some kind of B12 tablet. I just take like a multivitamin. It's just got everything. I don't think I even need it.
I think I do anyway. But yeah, that's a good point. I didn't know about that. So that's not a good point.
A lot of people who do eat animal products, they still need B12 as well. They should be taking it.
If meat was giving you all the nutrients and vitamins and like the peak of health, then everyone who ate meat would be sort of peak human specimens, wouldn't they? Yeah. And I think they're not. So
before we start the podcast, you told me you wanted to talk more about like materials and things rather than just food, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what did you have in mind?
Well, I think, as I said earlier, like one of the main reasons I turned vegan is because of like the environmental impact.
Yeah.
But I also think it's part of that is, moving aside from perhaps animal production is also well, I get one, maybe not moving aside from it, but yeah, the way sort of clothing or any consumable good basically can have a massive impact. I think it's been touched upon before, and maybe doesn't even necessarily tie into like veganism, but the rise of like fast fashion, the rise of throwable products that are sort of instantly thrown away upon use or whatever, or not even the fact they exist, but more the materials they're made from. Like say fast food containers, being made of styrofoam.
Right. Yeah.
Comparative to them being made of cardboard, like both of those products are going to be thrown away at the end of the day. That's their designed use clearly. And I realize that like recycling cardboard, there is a carbon impact, but clearly it's far less than destroying or reusing, for example, plastic styrofoam ones. Yeah. And then perhaps a bit more like sort of vegan centric specifically would be like the fashion industry. Obviously very much is you have like obviously directly sort of leather and stuff, they're moving away from that. But then also perhaps less obviously the destruction of habitat to facilitate like growing products to be used in dyes or I'm not, I don't know a great deal about it, if I'm honest with you.
No, that's fine. Veganism and environmentalism are obviously like they're separate issues, but they overlap an awful lot.
Yeah.
So if you're vegan and you know nothing about environmentalism, I would find that kind of strange because you've probably encountered it quite a few times.
Right.
And you'd probably be hard pressed to find a vegan who doesn't care about the environment.
Right.
It's not my strong area. I know a little bit just from like documentaries and things like that. Like leather, for instance, is often touted to be like a byproduct of beef, whereas actually it's as lucrative as beef, if not a little bit more, the amount of money you can make from leather.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought it was a byproduct in the sense of like it's a leftover product from beef production, I guess.
There's one big problem. I don't know if this is like a tangent. There's one big problem with vegans and leather is that you might have leather from before you went vegan. And then there's the question of what to do with it. And I've never encountered a satisfactory answer. So I was wondering what's your opinion on that?
It's a very tricky.
I guess question. Our options are just keep them and keep using them. Give them to someone or like a charity shop or something. Bin them. But
I think, well, I mean, this is obviously the big argument, isn't it? Like, if you bin it, and I mean, as I say, like for me, environmentalism was a big part of turning vegan. Yeah. So obviously, binning it is, I think obviously there's a clear argument for it being like actively bad for the environment because obviously then you're basically clearly a lot of products and pollution's been put into the atmosphere in order to create.
I think leather is particularly bad as well. Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And so binning it is sort of, you're completely, you're not even using the lifestyle of the product.
Yeah.
And then I think there's an argument. I don't know to what extent I believe this myself, but I think there's an argument that it's like even more disrespectful to the animal that's been killed for the leather.
It's a tough one, man.
To bin it, but I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to that.
But then on the other hand, and I guess like the animal in question won't actually know. It's one thing as well.
Right. Yeah.
It's just our personal feelings on that.
Yeah.
On the other hand, though, it's like if I'm walking around with like my leather wallet and leather shoes and let's say my handbag,
are you perpetuating the idea that that's all like, right?
I'm giving off an image like I'm okay with this. I think it's okay, and if enough people are doing that,
is sort of maintaining that industry, which otherwise would be moving away from using that product.
Yeah, so it's a tough one because leather, I think, is quite a durable material. It lasts like a very long time, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the whole.
That's the point of it.
I think less so now. I guess it's more fashion, but certainly I think its original development. I mean, I think it's one of the oldest, from my understanding. It's one of the oldest clothing materials.
I know, like when you play your RuneScapes and your Oblivion and your Skyrim and all that, like leather is like one of the cheaper, more easily accessible ones, and that's set in the past.
And that is 100% historically accurate.
Are you going to have to face this decision?
Yeah. I have leather products. I've got one leather product. Yeah, I've got a leather wallet. Yeah, it's a very good point. I mean, as you say, they don't wear out. That's the main appeal. I think that's the big, like aside from fashion, the other big thing is that they don't wear out. So it's I guess in terms of not perpetuating an industry, but also not sort of in effect letting the carbon impact of the product being created be wasted. Yeah. The best thing to do would be to give it to a charity shop.
Okay.
I think would be, or a friend, or whatever. Like, but not you're no longer using the product, but someone else is, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I mean,
There's not a perfect answer to this at all. Every answer has got a glaring disadvantage, and there's no answer that doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the big thing, isn't it? With sort of most clothing production, unless to an extent, all clothing production, but there are certain companies that do sort of carbon offset and ethically source their materials, and I think if you're again sort of moving away from veganism itself, but perhaps tying in again to sort of the ethics and the sort of environmental impact that often is associated with veganism, I think those companies generally also are paying their workers a bit more fairly and stuff.
Yeah,
that are creating the products. Obviously, it's a case by case company. I'm not going to say they all do it, but
no, sure.
I do think there's a sense that if you're paying for a vegan product. Like I have recently bought a relatively large amount of vegan fashion.
Oh yeah.
Or like vegan products from a company called Vegan Outfitters, which is very, very good. And their products are, I mean, I think the other, so I was going to say their products are 100% cotton, which they are. Well, their t-shirts and jumpers are, and I think they do like jogging bottoms, which I guess must have elasticine in them
Sure.
to be
Yeah.
the product they are. Yeah, I mean, I guess, which is good in the sense that they're not using plastic. A lot of man-made fibers obviously are very bad in their creation for the environment, and also they don't break down. Cotton ultimately breaks down over time. I mean, again, there is an impact of growing cotton on a mass scale.
Sure, but it's less so than like plastic and like the chemicals in certain animal products and stuff, right?
Right. I think that's it, isn't it? I think, short of growing all your own food whilst naked, there is no way. There's certainly no way to live a modern life that doesn't have an impact. Every phone has elements in it which are not mined in a sustainable or good way.
Absolutely.
And also destroy habitats. So I think with everything, I think there is an element of,
by living, you do have an impact.
Right.
And I think I'm not sure if you're aware of like the definition of veganism, because vegan was like a coined term in like the 40s, right? And the Vegan Society have the original definition on their page, and it includes as far as practicable and possible.
Right. Okay. Right.
And it sort of lets you off the hook for having like, I don't know, there's probably something in my laptop that's got some kind of animal product, or like UK money has animal fat in it.
Right.
And
it's got tannin in.
Yeah. It's tannin, is it?
Yeah. That's the or a byproduct of, but that's what it's got in. Yeah.
So it's just that, really.
I think electronics, I think the grease of the hinges of laptops often is animal based.
Oh, really?
When it's first put in, yeah.
You look into everything around you, there's some kind of animal thing being used.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Do what we can, and I think I'm hoping at least, like we're moving into a vegan world eventually. And as there are fewer and fewer people supporting animal products, there are less animal byproducts, let's call them, available.
Right, yeah, right, okay.
So companies have to change,
I think,
at that point.
Yeah, to the ethics of why companies are doing this. But aside from that, I do think there is a real push towards more vegan products, more generally eco-friendly products.
Yeah.
Like something you don't think about, but the production of concrete is really bad for the environment.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, the way it's manufactured is just the pollution that goes into it before you ship it. When you ship it, the water production used in concrete is massive in its production, and then when you get it to site, even more, and it's often wetted down first before it's mixed, and like it's really, and then you wet down the dust as well, so there's even more. So it's not great. And there's recently been one developed which uses, I can't remember how much, but it's like a lot. It's like 60% less water or something, and its production is a lot less environmentally damaging.
Is concrete like an artificial thing then? I feel like it's super sand,
Right. Well, I guess it's not artificial in the sense that it's elements that are put together. So it's like sands and quicklime and water, and I think it can be gravels and stuff depending on what concrete you're making. So in that sense, they're natural materials.
Sure.
But then bear in mind, they have to be quarried before they're produced into concrete.
Yeah.
And then even when they get to the producing plant, like I say, the water used, and that's just one product. That's like one element of quite a widely used product, sure, but one element of a much, much larger industry and production. But yeah, and I think it's very interesting that they're really a big push into sort of moving away from the as damaging effects of materials like that. Again, that's just one industry. I think on a much wider scale, that's also the case as well.
I think like even in the past 5 years, just seeing how much, actually both veganism and environmentalism has exploded. When you go to the supermarket and stuff like that, they have whole vegan aisles, and they have like these items are sustainably grown and
right. Yeah.
People really seem to care about it these days, and it's going faster and faster.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think it's really good. I think, obviously there's still work to do, but I think often you can get a bit bogged down in
Yeah.
it being very overwhelming. Like, you need to fix this, you need to fix this. And I think, with sort of everything else, and if you're tying that into other ethical issues, it can be very overwhelming. And I think it's nice to occasionally sort of be like you say, even in the last 5 years, and it's still accelerating, it's not plateaued.
Yeah.
It's definitely good news.
One thing I wanted to say for you, since you're new to this, like, I wouldn't call it a mistake, but what's happened to me is I've become so entrenched in veganism. I pretty much only speak to vegans. I'm always doing like activism and making videos and researching and blah, 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 blah. That I'm no longer sort of in touch with how I felt before I went vegan. And now I feel like it might be a little bit difficult to talk to someone about cow's milk and understand what they're thinking, to understand how I should advocate,
Right.
So for you, just in case you do get active in the future, if you could like take note of sort of how you feel about things now and see if you can remember them, and that should really help you in the future then. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, it definitely makes sense. It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, well, I suppose it shows sort of how much
I've grown.
How much you've grown, exactly.
No, you can find yourself in a bubble sometimes, so you can forget.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, interesting.
Like occasionally, like I'll make something that's a little bit angry, maybe, right? Like, how dare you like pay for baby cows to be killed? I never like that much, but a touch of that. And I forget, like most people don't know that baby cows are killed for milk.
I think that's it. And I think, as you said earlier, I mean, a lot of it is ease and not knowing. I don't think people, I just think it's easy. Like often it's just easier to get cow's milk.
Yeah.
Which I think is probably the overwhelming. I mean, maybe not, but I think for a vast majority of people in the supermarket, I think they just they're like, oh, I need some milk, go to the milk aisle.
Yeah, it's not a decision to make. That's just what we do.
It's just why would you suddenly decide after 30, 40, 50 years to just completely change without any knowledge,
So maybe the way is like just reminding people you do have a choice.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So I think for a lot of vegans, when they first start, the first week or so, they're a bit like bewildered, right? Like, what? Everyone's lied to me this whole time, kind of thing, right? And then they get angry, right? Like, why aren't people doing something about this? Right. Or like, for me, it was so difficult because I've learned all this stuff, about what goes on. I'm like, all right, well, I care about this, so I'm changing.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, how did you find that? Because like you say, you're obviously very passionate about it.
That's it. Yeah.
And like you said, they really had an anger. And I mean, your family are absolutely lovely. They're really nice people. But they're not even vegetarian, they're not. I don't think they sort of understand, do they?
So, my brother is,
most of them,
to be fair.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
He's vegetarian. He was let's say vegan for the environment, plant-based for the environment, right? Yeah, so you learn all this stuff, you're like, okay, I care about this stuff, so I'm going to change. So you start to tell the people around you, because you're like, okay, my family and friends, I know they're caring people, I know they're nice people. I need to tell them, and they're going to change too, but they don't. And that is something that I find really difficult to accept.
You were young, weren't you, when you turned vegetarian?
Yeah, I was 9. I went pescatarian, and like 11 or 12 was vegetarian.
And obviously your family didn't, did they? Like right. They didn't change their. So did it feel a bit like that? When obviously you're much older now, but was it the same sort of feeling of like, why weren't they?
I remember being angry in high school and like being really preachy at break time and stuff like that with my friends. Still to this day, really, I can't accept that it goes on. Like, part of me tells me like this isn't true, Like, I see footage of like slaughterhouses and stuff like that, and like it's like I'm watching a horror movie sometimes. Like, part of me just doesn't believe it.
You're real passionate about it. Like, you've seen those, but then I assume you've sort of shown that to like your family. Say,
I try to. I'm sure they've all seen that kind of thing, like once or twice, but
yeah,
they don't want to at the same time.
Right. I guess that's sort of what you're saying about you've forgotten why people would drink milk, say. And I think it's that, isn't it? You're like burying your head in the sand because it's easier to
Yeah,
I mean, I think less so now because of sort of the prevalence of vegan and vegetarian food.
sure.
But I think in a general sense, it's easier to just sort of pretend if it doesn't matter, or
Definitely.
it's not affecting you directly, is it? Like I mean, obviously, like a sense of like moral, emotion, but but if you sort of don't combine that emotion for maybe me and you feel with a sense of like the meat you're eating, then
Yeah.
it's not you're not going to care, are you?
And you keep those things separate in your mind. You try not to connect them. And I
Right,
get
yeah.
that because that's why I took so long to go vegan from vegetarian, because I was willfully ignorant. I knew something was going on and I was like, I'm not looking.
We've all seen that episode of The Simpsons with Lisa when she turns vegetarian with the lamb.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So just imagine that was a block of cheese, I guess.
It's exactly that, really. And that's what I do believe that's what people are doing. Because like we said earlier, most people they do like animals.
Yeah, right.
They also like to eat meat and they don't want to change, I think.
Well, I just think there's a disconnect, isn't there? I would imagine the amount of people who eat meat would drop a lot if the people who wanted to eat meat, you gave them a knife and were like, all right, here you go.
Yeah,
Cows out there.
that's right. Veganism skyrockets to 98%.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously some people still wouldn't, obviously.
Yeah, of course. People hunt, people fish.
Yeah, exactly. But I would say the majority of people who just go and buy their meat in the supermarket,
Yeah.
I think a lot of them would probably not. If you just
definitely.
said, you have to sort of get it yourself.
Like now we're suffering. Like you say, we got human health is absolutely suffering.
Yeah, absolutely.
The biggest, I think 9 of the top 10 killers are related to consumption of animal products.
Right.
I'll include environmentalism. But, that says something. And the only one in that list that isn't from animal products is accidental death, like falling.
Right. So, exactly. And
we've got pandemics. We've like illnesses and stuff like the seasonal flu. All comes out of this. How much profit can we squeeze out of it? Disregard for the humans, for the environment, for the animals.
It's a way up.
Yeah.
Where profit is always king. It's how many people can we push outside? How much human health, how much animal health, how much of that can we push aside to make the biggest profit margin? And in a way that, like I say, I think it's always been profit driven. I just don't think it's been purely profit driven in a way which I think it is now. And that's what I feel an anger about.
Okay, well, where are you going to direct that anger then?
Probably nowhere.
Yeah.
Sit at home. No, by becoming vegan for a start.
Sure.
When you invest in like smaller companies and independent, stores and products and stuff like that, and maybe some activism.
We'll get you there. You just settle in for the moment, and when I come to England in a couple months, I'll grab you and like race you to a slaughterhouse, and we'll shout at people in the middle of the street. And
I'll feel 15 again. I'll feel punk again.
Okay, well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Ben.
Yeah, cheers, boy. It was lovely.
Do you want to plug anything?
Well, me and you have another podcast, which I suppose we could plug.
It's very different. It's nothing to do with veganism.
It's nothing to do with veganism.
No.
Comedy.
We're an improv duo.
We are.
We're called Improv Radio, and you can find us in all the same places you can find this podcast. So if you want to check that out, that's called Improv Radio. Thanks for listening.